Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you?
Great, Mal. How are you on this fine Tuesday morning?
Yeah, really good. Obviously we are slightly later than we usually are. We normally do it on a Friday, and we are switching it round to doing it basically early in the weeks again. This was those who've been listening for a while may remember this is when we used to do it. Yes, so we're going to try and get it every single week, early Monday, Tuesday, and get it out. So yes, apologies for those that were looking forward to it over the weekend, but this I hope will make up for it because we've got plenty to talk about this week. Let us crack into our property news. All right, first up in the property news, the use of AI in complaints. Now, probably many people out there listening have noticed there's been an uptick in the number of really well written complaints coming into their businesses because AI has really lowered the bar for people to send in very well written reasons why they are unhappy about something that you have done. So the Ombudsman has seen an uptick of 55% in the number of complaints against estate agents in the first part of this year already, and that is bound to be being replicated across businesses, not just in our sphere but also elsewhere. Matt, what do you make of this?
It's quite an interesting one because you say very well written, and I've seen some very verbose complaints. That's definitely true. But I was actually with the property management department on Monday of last week, and we're discussing like old-fashioned complaint letters that would come in via paper and pen, and you'd sit there reading 9 or 10 pages of A4 and then discover that there's not actually any questions being asked or any demands being made. And they said, yep, we're getting that with AI now, where there's a lot of information and going off and looking into law that's not necessarily applicable to the situation. And by the end of the email, there's actually nothing being asked. They've just written a very long trove of information into one
just
email.
Venting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and I think I've said on the pod before, but it's someone I was talking to a few weeks back, that someone said, I've got this massive complaint email from the tenant, what do I do? And I pick up the phone and speak to them. And it's like you sit behind the complaint emails. But on this particular story, I was trying to get my head around it because there's 3 or 4 in the various press articles, wasn't there? And there's a couple of people had come out from the I think it was Greg had come out, so former Property Mark. Yeah, former Property Mark chair, and there's one of the incoming Property Mark chairs saying about how it's bad and everything else, and I was trying to work out why the articles were there. But actually, the Ombudsman had said that they've come out to say you don't need to declare as people writing to the Ombudsman that you've used AI in your complaint, and that was, I think, why various people coming out saying it was an issue. But I think it's quite simple in my mind, right? If someone's used AI to write the complaint, then you use AI to write the response. Just let let your agents talk to them.
Exactly, just have this little arms race. No, I completely agree. I think it is. Yeah, the thing that the AI does very well is if you are annoyed about something, so, I don't know, it's taken your landlord longer to fix a tap than you wanted, then AI really agrees with you very quickly that you have a point, and that can really kind of like help people to kind of think, yeah, actually, I should take this further, and I do want some form of like acknowledgement / compensation / so I think that's really the driver. Is it's almost the kind of like slightly sycophantic behavior of AI that basically makes what is a tiny issue into something rock solid, and then that gets sent in, and then you have to, as you say, kind of deploy AI to essentially write it back. So yeah, anybody out there, I think basically what you should do, rather than having to rewrite this stuff every single time with AI, is basically just have a kind of bank of assess what you're getting, summarize it into like different buckets, and go, right, for the annoyed tenant who thinks that we've been doing something wrong, this is the kind of stock response. For the person who's been whose property has taken longer to sell than they ideally wanted because they've priced it too high, this is the one to kind of, a lot of these you will have anyway because they will be fairly stock, but yes, it's just the volume that is kind of coming through much more plentifully. And as you say, Greg Suman, ex-Arla president, said that he felt that consumers should be forced to say whether they've used AI to try and stop them from doing it. There's an interesting story later in our AI and tech news about watermarking and actually, but the ability to be able to see whether people have used AI. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. The Ombudsman's kind of ruled it out as well. But yes, it is. It isn't going to go away, folks. It's going to be something that increasingly is going to be more and more people will discover that they are tremendously justified in venting, as you say. So yeah, I think having some tools for defence very early on is probably going to be a wise move. All right, next up in our property and property news, sorry, is Rightmove has downgraded its forecast for asking prices for this year to between 0 and -2% growth. So that's from a baseline of just a smidge up above zero, and that's kind of on the back of a number of other stats that have been coming out this week about the state of the housing market. One interesting one, I think from Zoopla, was that flats over the last 10 years have grown by 10% in value, whereas houses have grown by 43% over the 10-year period. So there is, much specifically in this year, the uncertainty around the war, cost of living crises, mortgage rate uncertainty, they're going to go up, going to go down, people coming off their mortgage rate. The actual cost of moving house, is now really being exposed as a significant one. And there isn't necessarily confidence that 5 years time your property is going to be up in value anyway, so it's all going to pay off. What's your reading of all of these property runes this week?
I think the specific one that maybe I'm leaping to is the fact that the flats and there's only 10% increase for those versus a set of houses, and sort of extrapolating from that it's probably related to leasehold, right, rather than freehold, and the challenges of actually acquiring a leasehold property and how much longer the sales process takes to get those. I think there's some wild stats, like it's almost 6 months at times, and people who've been going through process for nearly a year to obtain those. And if you know that up front, and maybe you're going to dial back on a flat and buy a cheaper, smaller, but a house that's freehold, right? What about yourself?
Yeah, so absolutely that, the cladding issue, there is so much noise around flats. And when you buy a flat, you don't just get the flat, right? You get the service charge, you get the managing agent, you get all sorts of, you get your fellow leaseholders, whatever. So it comes with baggage, and that's baggage that can make the economics of flat ownership wildly different from what you thought they were, and certainly different from what the house buying a house involves. So yeah, look, I think that on that, I think it is really, it just kind of illuminates the fact that there's almost like different asset classes now. You've actually got a flat as being a different type of asset from a house. If your economic calculation is that the equity in the property is going to be the really important bit, rather than any rent or something like that might come through from it, then I do think it's a very different kind of conversation, a very different mindset that would make you choose which of those to go for. And then, as far as the kind of general state of the market is concerned, property prices looking like they're coming down. It's always transaction volumes, right? That's the most important thing in the industry, not necessarily the headline price. Transactions seem to be relatively sort of lumpy in terms of being able to get through. It's taking longer and longer. I think there was another report out this morning, Tuesday the 18th of August, from Zoopla again, saying that prices are properties are taking longer and longer and longer to move, apart from in Scotland, and that just kind of speaks to the challenges of the market. I think everybody is hoping that autumn will see finally a bit of a pickup as people come back off a glorious summer of holiday and break, and decide that actually now is the time to move after 2 years of not bothering. But yes, remains to be seen whether that pickup happens. But certainly Rightmove is talking it down a little bit and saying that it's actually maybe 2027 before things start to look a bit rosier. So that's our second property news story. The third one is about Renters' Rights Act and the impact of the Renters' Rights Act. So this is a story this week about how the kind of unintended consequences of regulation. And again, those in our industry with long memories will know that pretty much every time a new piece of legislation comes in, then there are enormous unintended consequences. Many of them actually spoken about way before the legislation itself comes in. So this particular piece is about bidding, the inability of landlords to allow, or agents of landlords to allow bidding wars to break out for particular properties, means that landlords are actually pricing these properties higher with a view to being negotiated down, basically. So, again, it kind of just moves the actual process of negotiation a bit kind of further upstream, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's no surprise either, right? When you have these market interventions and the government stepping in to bring new legislation, then the market reacts. And what is the lever that you can pull? Well, if you're not allowed to bid bid over the price, then you increase the price, right, when you're listing it. And we saw the same thing in slightly different guise when the tenant fee ban came in, and suddenly tenants couldn't be charged things, so landlords got some extra fees, and landlords increased the rent to reflect that. And this is just the same thing. but in a different context in my mind. It's inevitable that people will find a way. I think what was interesting from the Cheston story as well, I think it's 3% ish up from 1%, but also that they're seeing 20% extra or increase in applicant registrations in August compared to the previous year. And that seems quite a significant leap, which I think I can't really explain that one easily.
Yeah, and which kind of almost means that if you are pricing higher as a landlord, then maybe the market might come to meet you anyway. So
Yeah.
if the demand is there. So no, yeah, I completely agree. I think that this is one of those kind of inevitable kind of side issues that comes of interfering in the market. One thing that I think is going to be quite interesting is because obviously we look at a lot of stats and things like that. Actually, if asking prices have jumped specifically because the actual achieved rents are going to be underneath, then a lot of the stuff you see online. We were just talking about Rightmove's report on house price asking prices. Our rent asking price is going to see a sudden significant uplift, and everyone goes, "Wow, that must be a great moment in the market." But actually, what it is it's just this knock-on effect of the Renters' Rights Act coming, and what does that do to, I don't know, rental indices and things like that out there? There's always something you've just got to be mindful of when you do see these kind of different spikes in stats as to whether it is a genuine, the market is healthy and so on, or if it is just something that actually is a manufactured change as a result of something legislative coming through the pipes. All right, that is our property news for this week. Let's talk about AI and tech news. All right, we wanted to start off with Anthropic and its IPO valuation. There's been some stories from Dario Amodei in the last couple of days where he's been out talking about how he's going to end up as the only corporate business left in America by the sound of things. So yes, essentially the IPO valuation says that they're going to get about 200 billion in revenue in 2028, and basically it's going to see the risks of AI rising, a lot of change in a very, very quick space of time. Matt, you've been having a real good delve into this. What's your take?
There's quite a lot to unpack on this one, especially across the various Anthropic stories. I think starting with Amodei and sort of coming out all guns blazing, he sort of said the issues with AI more than anything. I think he took to Twitter, which he very rarely does, but he said actually there's a big risk and AI is not delivering, which they can be quite outspoken, can't they, Anthropic, and tell us that the world's gonna end, and that their latest set of adverts were very much about these sort of dystopian futures that sort of alluding to AI causing them. But he said in one of his talking points was that the problem is that they've overpromised and they've underdelivered so far in terms of curing cancer and the sort of the shifts around that side of things. I think one of the starkest points he made, which maybe does throw it slightly, is he's saying that Anthropic are going to be the only tech business left by the end of it all, and one AI to rule them all, which is quite a daring thing. But I guess when you're going to 200 billion is the aim by 2028 and a 2 trillion IPO, you've got to sort of punch big, haven't you? But I think the biggest part of it is saying that actually it's nothing to do with AI. It's just nobody trusts anyone anymore, and it's been decades in the making. What do you make of that, Mal?
I mean, wow, there's a lot of mixed messaging going on here, isn't there? It's like there's nothing to worry about, but by the way, we're going to be the one AI company left, so you can trust us. And then just this whole kind of idea that essentially we don't trust each other anymore, and the world is polarized. We're going through a phase as a species of basically just being mean to each other. So therefore we're being mean about AI, whereas actually, previous generations would have absolutely embraced this and would have seen it in the same light as they see electricity and the railways and things like that as opportunities. And I think it is interesting. And you can then go back to like the Luddites, spinning Jenny and all that sort of stuff, and actually, raging against technological improvements. You can look at the automation in factories and things like that, where again, people were pretty anti it because they were worried about jobs. So I think, I don't know if it's necessarily a unique thing that people are anti-AI or concerned about it. I don't think it's been packaged very well. Like you say, the big kind of promises of, cures for cancer and, massive scientific breakthroughs. There have been some, and there's some real green shoots of opportunity that others will happen. There have been some amazing maths problems that have been solved that mean precisely zero to most people. but apparently really, really excellent. But yeah, I think that until we see some significant benefits, until society sees some significant benefits across the board, then the anti-AI stuff is still going to be prevalent. I do concede a little bit that we're probably a lot angrier than we used to be, but in large part, that's probably because of tech businesses, right? It's probably because of his predecessors, Zuckerberg and others, getting us all onto social media shouting at each other. But yes, I have some sliver of sympathy for his argument. But yeah, I do think that generally he's just got to be better. You've got to make the argument better. You've got to articulate what the benefits of data centers and things like that are, rather than kind of just saying just have them. And yes, I think that balance is going to have to swing a little bit. But yeah, he's an interesting guy with many interesting things to say. Not all of them I remotely agree with, but yeah, I do think having the debate is important. You?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. All right. So next up on our AI and tech news, a couple of releases. We always like to just make sure we're covering what is happening out there. So we've got SpaceXAi, which really doesn't roll off the tongue, has now debuted Grok 4.6, which again is another quite slightly remarkable model for Elon Musk is likes to defy expectations, and Grok 4.6 is pretty good. I think it's sort of it comes in number 3 now, which for a very cheap model, he's basically banking on the cost effectiveness of what he does, is pretty good. What's your take on this one?
I think more than anything, if we sort of take a step back and look at last year, 2025, when we started, Google wasn't really at the races, and then arguably 2025 ended up being Google's year. And sort of there's the three main large language models of, there's the OpenAI, the Anthropic, and the Google ones. And then take it back even just a few weeks, and Google's gone AWOL, and so you've just got Claude and ChatGPT, albeit within their various their appropriate harnesses, so slugging it out, and then suddenly SpaceX is back with Grok 4.6, and it's just how quickly things can shift in a matter of weeks, right? Still no new Gemini. Anthropic and Claude with their Claude and OpenAI and ChatGPT still duking it out, but SpaceX is coming hard. And I think what was really interesting was SpaceX debuting Grok 4.6 was not just the model, but Grokbot as well, which from everything that I've looked at, I've not actually used it yet, is the most accessible sort of open claw equivalent agent out there. And it's actually something that's really so accessible. A lot of people who aren't techies and aren't using it for business are using it in their personal lives. And so it's definitely worth having a look at not just Grok 4.6, but Grokbot, to be able to get it organized in your personal emails and following up on your calendar appointments and that sort of thing. Because you've got your team of open claws doing various things, but obviously you and I live and breathe this. But actually, there was testimonials from plumbers who'd started using Grokbot to organize their lives.
Wow. Yeah. And again, I think a lot of these, it's about testing. Try it. It is something that can really make a difference to bits and pieces of your operation, of your kind of administrative life, your personal life, as you say. And so, yeah, I think it's good to know what these things are capable of, because it can really kind of reframe how you're doing a lot of stuff out there. And so, yeah, we've had 4.6, Grok 4.6. We've had GLM 5.3, which is one of the Chinese open sources, which again is blowing things away. The interesting thing about this one is this model 5.2, so the previous version of this, was the one that Hugging Face, when they were attacked by OpenAI's new model, they couldn't use any of the Claude or the ChatGPT to try and defend themselves. So they used this Chinese model to actually get out of the situation. And so, yeah, they've released a new model as well. Again, things are continuing to build. It's a little bit quiet. I mean, it's August, the sun's out. So, it's not quite as busy as it was sort of over the early part of the summer in terms of releases. But yeah, I think people are building up for quite the autumn and winter in terms of new models coming through. But yes, it will be an interesting battle, and we still await ChatGPT's Astra model, which apparently is better than Anthropic's Mythos. And then you heard on the grapevine, Matt, I think that even
Model 2 That's
Is
it.
that
And
what it's called?
amongst all his other stuff Amadei was raving about, they dropped a nice, quiet message article on Friday saying that they've got Model 2, which they're using internally, but it's so dangerous, they're thinking about not releasing it. I feel like I've
Yeah.
heard that one before, right?
Same. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, basically trying to attract the ire of Donald Trump and his people again, no doubt. But yes, also with some beady eyes on the IPO coming up pretty soon for sure. All right, next up on our AI and tech news, we touched on Google a little bit. They're making the claim now that more than 1 billion people are using the Gemini app every month. Wonder whether this is actually the ChatGPT equivalent, or whether this is just I've got a Google app that they force me to use every time I want to log in, my two-factor authentication. Always a little bit sus about some of these things, particularly. I don't know, is it particularly Google? Probably right now, because they've obviously their surface area is so vast. If you log into Chrome or if you log into anything, then it will ask you to kind of go and use various different Google tools. And so, but I mean, I think that the kind of broader point is that AI use is continuing to grow, and that a lot of people are starting to use it in their day-to-day lives. There's also other news around DeepSeek releasing an official V4 Pro model. So that's kind of coming out. We've got Alibaba's Quen 3.8 Max is coming through. So lots and lots of different ways to use these models. And Matt, what's your take on all the kind of the movements that are taking place, and perhaps particularly the growth in Google?
It's just this production line of news features, isn't it? As you say, it's the summer, but still things coming. And I think Google's got to keep dropping positive news stories. We can try pick between the figures just because we're waiting to see where they've gone. And we talked about at length last week the changes in staffing, didn't we? And so yeah, I've got in the Chrome tab here, I've got an Ask Gemini button in the top right, and it does specifically say it's the Gemini app. So all those AI overviews you get back when you're Googling, dangerous to assume, isn't it? But I expect that it's not that. But, 1 billion, what's that? A sixth of the world using the Gemini app when we've already got
Yeah,
a sixth of the world using ChatGPT as well.
I know. Yeah, that is a lot of people, although probably quite a wide crossover in terms of Venn diagram of those two cohorts. Right, that is our AI and tech news for this week. And let's have a look at our tool of the week. All right, this is our focus on Claude Cowork coming to the Chrome side panel. So this, if you are using Chrome, obviously, as Matt just said, you can get the Gemini app very, very easily, but also you can now get Claude Cowork if you want your Claude history and memory and understanding of you to work alongside you. So Matt, have you been checking this one out?
I have, specifically because like mostly the stuff that I listen to is when I'm running, so it's like trying to understand the difference. And this particular one, I think I was going heavy along the seafront, and I was trying to understand why this was different to Claude's panel that's been in Chrome for the best part of 6 months to a year. And it is that very the key difference is it's Cowork that's there rather than Claude Code. So Claude in Chrome before, you would ask it a question, it would summarize the article you're looking at or the information, whereas this is Cowork, which is an agent. And so you can actually get it to do tasks off the back of it. It'll have the tooling you've got available to you as well. So it's pulling in, as you touched on, memory, but also usage, projects. And actually from within web pages, you can immediately get it to actually start going off and interacting with your emails, your calendar, your Slack, all those different things that you'll have connected. So it's a living, breathing agent in the page rather than the almost old-fashioned large language model that's just going to summarize a newspaper article that you're reading.
Yeah, no, it's again, wildly different from just your basic sort of chat feature. So yeah, no, if you haven't tried Claude Cowork, then it's definitely worth having a look at that, and perhaps in your browser as well. All right, that is all we've got time for this week on the Property AI Report. Thank you very much indeed for listening in. We will be back in 7 days' time, so early next week, with the next Property and AI Report. Thanks very much indeed for listening in, and we will see you then.
Take care.